T-Rex, king of dinosaurs. Its fossilized secrets have now been scientifically decoded. It had eagle-eye vision, could smell prey from 3 miles away, and his bite was a biological weapon. Yet new evidence reveals the T-Rex was another creature's prey. What hunted the ultimate hunter? They're the Earth's first fighters, the ultimate predators. New discoveries in forensic science bring to life the prehistoric art of war. This is Jurassic Fight Club. Go back, way back, 65 million years ago, to a time when the Earth was wild, raw, and mysterious. A place of violent upheaval and extreme change. The supercontinents of Laurasia and Gondwanaland fracture, forming the lands that man will inhabit millions of years into the future. In what will become North America, an ocean splits the landmass. Great shifts in the Earth's tectonic plates cause the Rocky Mountains to form in the west and the Appalachians to rise in the east. Volcanoes erupt with increased frequency. The world is in turmoil. Where South Dakota is today, volcanic ash carpets the terrain. It's the dry season. The temperature nears 100 degrees. A high oxygen level allows dinosaurs, the dominant life form, to grow to immense sizes. Among these giants is the largest predator on Earth, Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he's about to engage in a colossal fight to the death. Summer 1998. In the harsh Badlands of northwestern South Dakota, a group of amateur paleontologists are conducting a routine dig when they make a stunning discovery. They had stumbled upon a prehistoric crime scene. They were immediately able to determine that the remains belonged to a young T-Rex. But this was not just an ordinary skeleton. Many of the bones had been broken, and surrounding the skeleton were strange blade-like teeth. But these teeth were not the teeth of the baby T-Rex. They were the teeth of another unidentified predator. How had this T-Rex died?
In 1998, near the town of Belfouche, South Dakota, they found what appeared to be the skeletal remains of a relatively small dinosaur. At first, they weren't sure what they had, but the evidence started to emerge that told them this was a young Tyrannosaurus Rex. T-Rex is a pretty rare dinosaur, but juveniles are almost unheard of, so its discovery was pretty significant.
But as workers continued to excavate the remains, they observed something unusual. Ribs, leg, and arm bones, and various vertebrae showed signs of injury. The sheer number of broken bones was stunning. Something had happened here. Had another predator killed this T-Rex? The bones indicated a brutal battle scenario. Were paleontologists looking at a battlefield? Tyrannosaurus Rex was the apex predator of its time. So what animal could have taken on and killed this young T-Rex? In the late Cretaceous, T-Rex stood out among all other dinosaurs as one of the deadliest on Earth. They weighed up to 7 tons, stood 16 feet tall, and measured 43 feet in length, the size of an 18-wheeler. Its large size made T-Rex look impressive, But modern detective work revealed 3 unique features that made him a true killing machine. The first was his eyesight. In 2006, Lawrence Whitmer of Ohio University scanned the brain cavity of Tyrannosaurus rex. It's an important piece of the puzzle. We now know that T-Rex had powerful binocular vision.
From the CAT scan information, we can get a sense of the relative size of particular parts of the brain. The part of the brain associated with vision, the optic lobes, the part of the brain associated with the sense of smell, or the part of the brain associated with hearing.
Like an eagle, Tyrannosaurus rex had binocular vision. This gave it the ability to maintain focus on a moving target. In a fight, it had no trouble keeping its opponent within its line of sight.
T-Rex almost certainly had a pretty good visual field overlap, meaning it had pretty extensive binocular vision. What we see in the brain is that indeed the brain is structured to, in a sense, process that visual information.
Its second feature was its tremendously powerful jaws. With a bite force of over 3,000 pounds per square inch, it's among the strongest in the animal kingdom. Twice the strength of a great white shark.
What controlled the teeth and the damage those teeth inflicted were the jaw muscles. And T-Rex just has expanded the back of the skull so that it has a lot of musculature, so that it has the power to actually drive those teeth right through bone. It has this unbelievable power in its jaws, separated from all other dinosaurs and all other living animals as well.
Its third and most dangerous asset was its incredibly massive teeth. No other creature before or after has ever had spikes designed like these.
T-Rex had to use those teeth to crunch right through bone. And so it couldn't have narrow teeth the way the other carnivorous dinosaurs did. It had to make teeth that were really, really wide, and would have been incredibly damaging to anything that it bit.
These are pulverizing teeth. These could pierce through flesh, they could shatter bone, and they're anchored by extremely deep roots.
They're unlike any other predatory dinosaur's tooth. Look at the tooth of any predatory dinosaur, Allosaurus, Ceratosaurus, even raptors. You'll find that their teeth are more blade-like and are serrated on front and back. Very common. But look at the tooth of a Tyrannosaurus rex, and now you're looking at a railroad spike.
But those teeth may have held something more than just a massive bite. We now know that they may have been some of the world's first biological weapons. When Whitmer studied the skull, he saw that there were serrated ridges in the teeth. The ridges are remarkably similar to those of another animal with a deadly bite, a Komodo dragon.
Another interesting attribute about the teeth of Tyrannosaurus rex is that the serrations on the teeth, the fine little ridges, perhaps actually lodge little bits of flesh from a previous meal, and that rotting of that flesh would have produced a great deal of bacteria. What we're talking about here is really bad oral hygiene. Now, today we actually have animals, the Komodo dragon, this large, gigantic lizard that actually has what we call a septic bite. That actually, when it bites an animal, it in a sense infects it with the bacteria in its mouth.
Equipped with these weapons, it seems unlikely that any creature would attack a Tyrannosaurus rex, even one as small as a juvenile. So who had battled this T-Rex? To help answer this question, paleontologists had to get a complete picture of how T-Rex lived and fought. Step 1, study its environment.
When we look at the Cretaceous environments of this part of the world, it's not all that different than environments that we still have today. When we look at the plants, when we look at the climate and so on, we could assume that we were looking at something that looks very similar to what we see in the Gulf states, climate-wise and everything else-wise.
Fossilized plants found near the skeleton reveal that the young T-Rex lived in an area near conifer, pine, and magnolia trees. They also discovered prehistoric ash, which suggests that volcanic activity occurred on a regular basis. But in the investigation, scientists discovered something stunning. Bones of prehistoric crocodiles and fish were found nearby. This suggests that the T-Rex's body had been washed into a river during flooding. It's evidence of a violent Earth that could change without warning. After studying its environment, step 2 of the investigation was to study the behavior of Tyrannosaurus rex. Using evidence found in the bones and modern animal behavior, scientists pieced together how these huge dinosaurs hunted, fought, and raised their young.
Tyrannosaurus rex was the ultimate aggressor. There's nothing that Tyrannosaurus rex was afraid of, including its biggest prey item, Triceratops, which had these big formidable horns and frill to protect its neck. But there were no other dinosaurs around that would even give Tyrannosaurus rex a second thought about its own safety. There's no problem whatsoever. I can take you down.
And when T-Rex took its prey down, it was fast and ugly.
This is an animal that could probably bite and chew up a Volkswagen. So anything that got in the way of that mouth was in a lot of trouble. What they really do is get those teeth implanted, and then they rear back and just pull everything out, bones and flesh and guts and whatever happens to be there, and they crunch it up and swallow it whole. If you get into the way of this apparatus, you're not going to last very long.
Although Tyrannosaurus rex was a powerful and deadly predator, paleontologists now believe that they lived and moved in packs.
Over the last decades, 3 dig sites have suggested that large predators lived in family groups or packs. In Alberta, Canada, they found several skeletons of varying sizes from a big meat eater called Albertosaurus. In Utah, they found dozens of Allosauruses that had died at the same time in the same place. But the best evidence to support the idea that T-Rex lived in family group was made in Montana. Paleontologists discovered the remains of several individual skeletons that suggested that this was a family of Tyrannosaurus rexes.
Experts believe that living in a family pack would have ensured the safety of their young. Born very small, it took them nearly a decade before they were big enough to fend for themselves.
When T-Rex was born, it was small enough to fit in an egg about the size of a soccer ball. And then it spent the next 10 years or so relatively small, less than half a ton.
Based on the T-Rex traveling in packs, the investigation took a turn. Experts had to consider the theory. Is it possible that this juvenile T-Rex was with a sibling at the time of the attack? The experts say it is.
Based on modern birds, I think the T-Rex had 2, maybe 3 offspring at a time. I think the only time they were ever left alone is when the parents were out hunting. Once the babies grew large enough, they could go on the hunt with them. But until they reached that size, they were left behind, and this made them pretty vulnerable.
Like modern predators, the adults would scent mark their territory. These scents were designed to keep predators and other dinosaurs away. We also know that the only thing a T-Rex would fear was a larger T-Rex. Is it possible that this juvenile was killed by a member of its own family?
The tooth design of Tyrannosaurus rex is very distinctive and therefore leaves very distinctive marks on the bones. Had this juvenile been attacked and killed by another rex, then we would have no doubt because there would have been little of the skeleton remaining, but more importantly, they would have had these huge round holes punched through the bones. In my opinion, a T-Rex did not kill this baby.
The powerful jaws and teeth of Tyrannosaurus rex were capable of cracking any bone. But the lack of bite marks in the juvenile skeleton meant only one thing. Another Tyrannosaurus was not responsible for this attack. But these dinosaurs had few, if any, rivals. And with 2 protective parents in the family, few creatures would dare to attack their young. Protected or not, something killed this young tyrannosaur. New evidence would blow this prehistoric mystery wide open and expose the identity of the killer. Buried deep in the ground for millions of years, a scenario of a lethal dinosaur attack begins to unfold in South Dakota. The discovery of a juvenile Tyrannosaurus rex with numerous broken and missing bones. Investigators worked off the theory that two T-Rexes were in this battle. The volatile climate in the South Dakota Badlands demanded that the bones of the juvenile T-Rex be removed and shipped to a lab. Workers covered the bones with layers of plaster to ensure their protection during transport.
We have to worry about changes in the weather, for example. So we have to get the specimens out of the ground as fast as possible and back into the laboratory. We'll cover the top with plaster and burlap. And basically that's just a jacket or some kind of a container to hold everything together.
When they opened one of the plaster jackets, experts were given their first close-up look at a vital clue from the crime scene. The attacker's teeth. Closer inspection led to the identity of the suspect. Nanotyrannus, a smaller, stealthier version of Tyrannosaurus rex.
Nanotyrannus is one of my very favorite dinosaurs. The name actually means pygmy tyrant, and it's pretty aptly named because this was a one mean dinosaur.
Nanotyrannus-sized tyrannosaur would, in my opinion, be one of the most fearsome creatures that ever lived because it combines the firepower of T-Rex on a smaller scale with a great speed ability.
Nanotyrannus wasn't just one mean dinosaur. It's also one of the most controversial. It was originally named for a prehistoric skull found in Montana in 1942. Since then, experts have differed over whether Nanotyrannus is its own species or probably just a juvenile T-Rex.
One of the very difficult things in all of dinosaur paleontology, just because the animals are so rare, is to be able to understand this thing. I mean, is this a new species or is this just a juvenile of a species we already have?
Those who believe Nanotyrannus is its own species cite key differences between it and T-Rex. One is tooth design.
Well, one of the remarkable differences between Nano-T and a full-blown adult T-Rex is the structure of the teeth. Tyrannosaurus rex has these large, we sometimes call them banana teeth, in that they're certainly sharp and pointy and have serrated edges, but they're not really thin like the blade of a knife. Rather, they're more expanded like a banana. Whereas in Nano-T, what we see are teeth that are indeed much more knife-like. They're much flatter, a little bit more sharply turned back or recurved, the kinds of teeth we see in other kinds of predatory dinosaurs.
This suggests that while a T-Rex would crush bone, Nanotyrannus would tear through flesh in a slicing action.
There's up to 17 teeth in this part of the upper jaw in Nanotyrannus, and there's only 12 or 13 in Tyrannosaurus rex. Well, that suggests to me that these are different species of animals, and that these species are in fact valid.
But other paleontologists conclude something different.
Almost all the evidence, I think, points to it being a juvenile, and almost certainly a juvenile T-Rex. However, there is some evidence in terms of CAT scans on the inside of the skull and some of the hollow chambers in that brain case that are a little peculiar in Nanotyrannus.
And that's another key difference between these two predators, the shape of their brains. CAT scans performed by Dr. Whitmer gave some surprising results.
So when we did the CAT scan of T-Rex and Nano-T, it really looked like there were some striking differences. I mean, we can see some of those differences in the brain here. Here's a Tyrannosaurus rex. And when we bring up and look at the brain of Nano-T, we really see they're quite different. Of course, they're different in size. Nano-T was a smaller animal. But really, some of the differences go beyond size.
the size and shape of the brain was not the only difference. Experts would discover that the brain was actually positioned differently as well.
The brain of Nanotyrannus is shaped in a very different way from Tyrannosaurus rex. T-Rex held its skull kind of like this, pretty straight on, where Nanotyrannus actually looked like this. And you cannot change, because that is buried deeply in bone, you're not going to change the orientation of those semicircular canals of the inner ear. So clearly, this was a different animal.
This discovery proved that Nanotyrannus held its skull in a lowered position, making it easier to focus and strike at potential enemies.
The evidence clearly suggests that Nanotyrannus is its own species because there's enough distinctive differences between it and Tyrannosaurus rex to justify its name, Nanotyrannus.
Today, Nanotyrannus is considered its own species. A stealthy, aggressive predator who could hunt down and kill juvenile T-Rexes. It stood 7.5 feet tall, 17 feet long, and weighed about a ton, approximately half the overall size and up to a sixth the weight of a T-Rex. But what Nano-T lacked in stature, it gained in speed.
Nanotyrannus has much longer, more slender legs than Tyrannosaurus rex. That means this is an active running dinosaur. Even though Tyrannosaurus rex can run, he's not really designed to run all the time. Nanotyrannus is more like a cheetah on steroids.
These animals were really, really fast. They could outrun a Tyrannosaurus rex, no problem. And that also helped them when they're running down prey, of course, and so they could surround something and run it to death, basically.
Nanotyrannus was large enough to take on this juvenile T-Rex and certainly able to outrun its parents. But the bones had been broken. No bite marks were found on them. Did this mean that the Nanotyrannus had actually killed the juvenile T-Rex?
As a smaller animal, Nanotyrannus would not have the same kind of bite force that a big tyrannosaur would have. Its jaws were relatively longer and more elongated, and it had more teeth, and that suggests that it really never did develop the same kind of power that a Tyrannosaurus did, pound for pound.
Nanotyrannus would be a little more careful where it bit because it wouldn't have this great bone-crushing quality that a full-size Rex would have.
That is why no bite marks were found on the bones of the juvenile T-Rex. Nanotyrannus did not have the jaw muscles or tooth design for penetrating bone. Then, another hard look at the evidence would bring investigators closer to the answer.
When I saw the Nanotyrannus teeth that were found next to the juvenile skeleton, I had a pretty good idea of what had happened. But since no bite marks were found on the bones, it was hard to say with any real certainty that the Nanotyrannus had actually killed the baby. But then I took a second look at the teeth, and I realized that these were shed teeth. That means these were teeth that were broken off during the act of feeding. This means that Nanotyrannus had broken his teeth while attacking this baby Tyrannosaurus rex.
The teeth that were found near the T-Rex had been shed, but were the teeth broken during a battle? Or could the Nanotyrannus have simply found the dead T-Rex and lost them scavenging his remains? The prehistoric crime scene held the answers.
It's estimated that between 75 and maybe 90% of the baby Tyrannosaurus rex was found. If the Nanotyrannus had been scavenging it for food, then we would expect that the majority of the bones would have been gone, or at least the skeleton would have been torn up and disarticulated. But the fact that so much of the skeleton remained and that the pieces were found in relative proximity to each other tells me that Nanotyrannus was biting the baby T-Rex, but not eating it.
So one question remained. Why would a Nanotyrannus risk its life to attack a juvenile T-Rex, but not eat it?
Competition between predators has existed from the beginning of time. Being able to outcompete your opponent is a way to ensure your survival. Being faster, smarter, or stronger gives you a competitive edge, but in the case of Nanotyrannus, he could never compete with an adult Tyrannosaurus rex. It has no chance of killing an adult, so killing a baby is what it needed to do to survive. But why it didn't eat it remains a mystery. Perhaps it was buried very quickly after death and the Nano just didn't have time to eat it. Or maybe something interrupted him before he could take advantage of that potential meal.
The rotting corpse of a juvenile Tyrannosaurus rex lay buried beneath mud carried in from some prehistoric river. Investigators were working off the theory that two T-Rexes were in a battle. One was taken down by a Nanotyrannus. Evidence of the battle and its attacker remained hidden for 65 million years. This prehistoric crime scene will bring to life an epic battle between T-Rex and the T-Rex hunter. Tyrannosaurus rex was the most feared dinosaur in North America. Only one creature would dare enter its domain: Nanotyrannus. The battle lines are drawn in this life and death struggle as Nanotyrannus tracks down and attempts to kill a juvenile T-Rex. With an acute knowledge of Nanotyrannus and Tyrannosaurus rex, experts began to piece together how this dinosaur battle may have actually been fought. Although the T-Rex is a juvenile, it would still have powerful muscles and tremendous strength. But would that be enough to defend itself from an adult Nanotyrannus?
When you have a Nanotyrannus and a baby T-Rex together, you're dealing with animals that basically are well adapted in the same ways.
Even though they're the same size, Tyrannosaurus rex is going to grow up into be a lot bigger animal. And so because of that, the way its muscles are formed, the way its tendons are attached to the bones, all of this is a little bit different.
They're very similar kinds of animals from their basic structure. Their strength was probably very comparable. Probably the differences would most amount to experience, if we're talking about a youngster versus an animal that's been around the block a few times.
If an adult were around, a Nanotyrannus would never dare attack a juvenile rex. The only time a fight would occur would be if the adults were out hunting and had left the juveniles alone. Without the protection of an adult, then a juvenile would need to rely on its sheer bulk as a deterrent to being attacked. Even though it's not an adult, a young Tyrannosaurus rex is still a powerhouse.
The long legs of Nanotyrannus may have given it an edge when it came to its speed and agility. But when attacked, the juvenile T-Rex may have been more than a match.
When we compare a Nanotyrannus versus a subadult Tyrannosaurus rex of about the same size, they're going to be extraordinarily similar in terms of their hind limbs, their tail, and their body proportions. So they're, again, going to be very evenly matched when it comes to speed and agility.
Nanotyrannus would have something up on the juvenile Tyrannosaurus rex. Not only would it be more agile because its musculature was probably a little bit different, but also it would have a lot more experience than this juvenile T-Rex. So it would anticipate and be able to make the move a lot more smoothly and more quickly than a juvenile Tyrannosaurus rex.
Although an adult Nanotyrannus would have been faster and more agile than a juvenile T-Rex, the Rex had one advantage, and that's family support. If the Rex had a sibling, it would change the complexity of the battle very quickly.
With completely different tooth design, these two dinosaurs may have used them differently. There is no doubt that each were effective weapons, but which would be more deadly in combat? The thin slicing teeth of Nanotyrannus, or the thick crushing teeth of T-Rex?
Their jaws are a little bit different. That's how we tell these two animals apart. Nanotyrannus has more teeth in its jaws. The teeth are pretty much the same size as the teeth of a baby Tyrannosaurus rex. Still, the T-Rex would probably have had a much harder, stronger bite than the Nanotyrannus.
Nanotyrannus teeth are more primitive in design. They're much more blade-like, very thin. Tyrannosaurus rex are almost equal side to side as they are front to back. So this means that their feeding habits were different. Nanotyrannus would strip carcasses of bones. Tyrannosaurus rex would eat the whole carcass, including the bones.
The life of a predator depends on its ability to hunt and kill game, but it also had to defend itself against rivals.
Predatory animals have been at war with each other since the beginning of time. We see it today in animals like lions and hyenas. Predators don't tolerate other predators in their same environment because they both compete for the same food source. So any chance they have to kill a rival, they'll take it. An adult Nanotyrannus would have certainly taken advantage of an unguarded juvenile because it means getting rid of its competition.
Certainly their animals are similarly enough designed and comparable enough in strength that we might expect that the experience of the adult Nano-T would actually allow it to win the day over the young Tyrannosaurus rex.
In terms of fighting skills, of course, this adult Nanotyrannus will have had a lot more experiences over its lifetime than this juvenile Tyrannosaurus rex. So it may have literally years of experience beyond what this other young individual would have had.
In my mind, there is no doubt that Nanotyrannus would have been more than a match for a single juvenile Tyrannosaurus rex. The real question for me would be, what would happen if a Nano killed a rex? Would it eat it, or would it just leave it and move on? After spending energy in a fight, I would suspect that the winner would need to recharge his batteries and take advantage of that food source now lying at its feet. Why this Nanotyrannus didn't eat the juvenile is a pretty interesting question. Something happened after the fight that prevented him from eating this baby rex.
Nanotyrannus would have had an advantage over a juvenile T-Rex, but two juveniles against a nano would have radically changed the dynamic of the fight. By studying the bone fragments from the scene, CAT scan and environmental evidence, and using modern animal behavior as a guide, experts were able to reconstruct a plausible scenario of an epic battle. One that took place in South Dakota 65 million years ago. A pair of adult T-Rexes are on the hunt. They must leave their babies unguarded. The juveniles are unaware of approaching danger.
Leaving their young is a very risky thing. They understand that there's dangers out there, but they've got to leave the young long enough to go out and hunt for prey.
Traveling in search of prey, the adults could be gone for a long period. The adults have left a series of scent marks. They outline boundaries for the juveniles to stay within and for all other dinosaurs to keep out. Most dinosaurs are repelled by this pungent scent and retreat.
But one dinosaur in particular uses these scent marks as a homing device. Nanotyrannus actively hunts and kills young Tyrannosauruses. Not to eat, but to get rid of the competition. These two unguarded juveniles are at the mercy of this tyrant killer.
A Nanotyrannus knows he's no match for a fully grown T-Rex. He makes sure the adults are gone before he moves in for the kill. Senses on high alert. The two juvenile tyrannosaurs instinctively know that a predator approaches. They're too young to have ever seen a Nanotyrannus, but it doesn't matter. They're hardwired to recognize a threat and face it head on.
The Nanotyrannus doesn't just haphazardly attack. These young tyrannosaurs have a special defensive mechanism, a mouth full of bacteria. The Nanotyrannus knows that a nip from a young tyrannosaur could potentially end its life. These are the first animals to use biological weapons.
One bite full of that bacteria, and Nanotyrannus is dead from a massive infection, if the fight doesn't kill him first. He moves in cautiously, using his height advantage to assert his dominance. He leans in, flashing those serrated teeth. Their hissing is a warning. We're not backing down. The fight's on. The Nanotyrannus hangs back, making mock lunges. It's a luring technique.
If he can get them out of the nesting area, they have no hope. But the juveniles instinctively stay in the security of the nesting area. They stand shoulder to shoulder, facing their attacker.
Nanotyrannus circles his rivals, looking for an opportunity.
The little Tyrannosaurus leaps forward and snaps his jaws and loses his footing. The Nano grabs the young Tyrannosaurus Rex behind the neck, picks him up, and throws him like a rag doll across the forest floor. Now he's only got one juvenile left.
The lone juvenile doesn't stand a chance.
The young T-Rex seems panicked. It wants to turn and run, but instincts tell it to stand its ground. It roars as loud as it can. This is basically a cry for help. It hopes that mom and dad are near enough to hear this. The Nanotyrannus knows that the young T-Rex has just sounded an alarm. He's got to end this battle, and he's got to get out of there quick. He leans in and decides to go for a full frontal attack.
Nanotyrannus leans in again, waiting to make his lethal lunge. He's using his experience as a veteran fighter to his best advantage. The T-Rex, a rookie warrior, tries to match his every move.
As he moves in for the kill, Nanotyrannus feels a horrible pain in his left leg. He looks down, and there is the second juvenile T-Rex. He's recovered from his sling across the forest floor, and he's attacking. He's bitten the Nanotyrannus on the leg, and if that wound becomes infected, it could end his life.
This time, Nanotyrannus will make sure that the T-Rex dies. Flexing all the power of his jaws, he clamps down with nearly half a ton of pressure and crushes its spinal cord.
He throws it to the ground, and using his foot claw, he stomps the baby. Now it knows that juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex is dead.
But there's no time to eat. One T-Rex down, Nanotyrannus moves in for the final kill.
As he leans down to take a bite, he feels the ground begin to vibrate. This telltale sign says there's something big and it's nearby.
That something big is the adult female T-Rex returning from her hunt. When she sees what's happened in her absence, all hell will break loose. A pair of adult Tyrannosaurus Rexes have gone on a hunt, leaving their two juveniles unattended. In their absence, a predatory Nanotyrannus has terrorized their offspring, killing one and threatening the other. But now, the ground begins to vibrate. The sound can be heard for miles. It's the adult female T-Rex coming back from her hunt.
She hears the very distinctive sound of her young pleading for help. It kicks in an emotion that's only found in female Tyrannosauruses. Mess with my baby, you're messing with hell.
Driven by her maternal instincts, the female is the first to arrive on the scene.
female Tyrannosaurus knows instinctively this is a killer of juvenile Tyrannosaurus rexes. She's got to leap into action. She doesn't have to worry about sizing up this opponent. She's 3 times bigger. She just needs to kill him.
The female T-Rex intends to distract Nanotyrannus from the lone surviving juvenile. Nano sees her giant jaws and sidesteps with his long legs.
But the female has accomplished the most important thing: get herself between her remaining juvenile and the killer of baby T-Rexes. Now the Nanotyrannus has 2 options: try to finish off the remaining juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex, or turn around and run. It decides to pit its speed and agility against the strength of a mad Tyrannosaurus Rex. He tries to flank her. If he can move around quickly enough, she cannot respond. He can go in and with his elongated snout, grab the juvenile, shake it in its mouth, and kill it and flee.
But Nanotyrannus underestimates his opponent. Fueled by raging levels of adrenaline, she spins and turns, avoiding his flanking move.
The last thing he sees are the open jaws of the female Tyrannosaurus Rex. She grabs the Nanotyrannus in her mouth, and using the bite force of 1,000 pounds per square inch, she crushes the back, crushes the ribs, and ends the life of this attacker.
But killing the Nano isn't enough for the mother T-Rex.
She wants to use him as a message to any other Nanotyrannus that comes into this area. Using her massive foot claws, she rips apart the body of the Nanotyrannus.
Having killed the attacker, she turns her attention to her lone surviving offspring. Nanotyrannus had no chance to win this fight. He lost because he made 2 fatal mistakes.
Number 1, it misjudged the maneuverability of an adult Tyrannosaurus Rex. Number 2, he failed to recognize that the bond between a mother and its offspring is stronger than any weapon it had.
T-Rex may have triumphed over Nanotyrannus in this fight, but in the ultimate battle for survival, they would both lose.
Nanotyrannus and T-Rex, because they're in Western North America, they may have even seen the flash of their doom, the great explosion in the Yucatan Peninsula when an asteroid hit it, ending the age of dinosaurs. Of course, the dinosaurs didn't die immediately. The big meat eaters like T-Rex and Nanotyrannus would have actually had a short period of time when they did really well. When the starvation starts to hit the plant eaters, there's a lot of meat available, and the meat eaters can get in there and they could gorge. And then after a while, they're looking around, there's nothing left to eat. It was too bad for T-Rex and Nano, they were gone too.
Gone, but not forgotten. The mystery of T-Rex and Nanotyrannus may never be fully known. But while the search for facts continues, this much is certain. 65 million years ago, giant creatures with supersized weapons transformed prehistoric Earth into a battlefield. In the ultimate contest of speed versus size, size won big.